Malcolm hit me up.
Hmm?
Malcolm hit me up to train.
Who hit you up?
Malcolm?
Malcolm. Oh, good. Did he bring in his buddy?
No, I think he wants me to go up there.
Oh, really?
So I'm gonna try and negotiate down.
Hmm.
He's in like Los Altos or something.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to cross train too much. No, it's not the time to visit new places.
No?
I don't know. I like training with him though. He's good at judo.
sound back up.
I used to play soccer when I was a child.
Yeah, were you good?
Sorry, a smaller child.
Younger child?
They always used to put me in the goal. And
Well, it's because you're huge, right?
no, I'm just lanky, but they didn't take into account the fact that I'm a coward. And so
You could run away from the ball.
it never worked out. And like, so I would just be like,
Can you guys
playing
hear us
with
now?
the
Okay,
grass.
good. All right, good. Nope. What's up, people?
Although one time I did kick the ball all the way downfield into the goal, the other people's goal.
The other people, not your own goal?
Yeah, which is amazing when you're like 6. And I was just sad they didn't give me the point though, because I guess that's illegal in Pee Wee soccer.
That's what?
It's illegal in Pee Wee soccer. You're not allowed.
What, to
You
kick
can't-
it all the way down the field?
Yeah, you can't. It's not. I don't know, it's not a corner kick, but like whatever they do with
Is it really illegal?
Yeah, like yeah. I guess like there's such a disparity between talent and kids that they have to modify the rules so that it's not just. But it's so fun. Did any of your daughters do soccer?
Who?
Your daughters?
No. It's
Really?
not good for girls.
I have a.
Well, it's actually a lot of girls in high school get knee injuries.
Yeah.
So that's what I was saying.
I just like watching young children play soccer where it's like they don't even use the real goals, they make tiny little goals for them.
Yes.
And then it's like just a gaggle, I don't know, what's the...
A gaggle?
What's
They
a...
just all run down the hill or the
Like-
field.
Like it's a group unit with no cohesive
Yes.
structure.
It's like an amoeba.
Yeah,
It's like a
really-
soccer
it's
amoeba.
fun. It's like watching like a white blood cell trying... Should I do things? Is this what we're doing?
What? No, we don't have to. I was just playing.
I figured out fireman's carry today.
Did you?
Yeah, I was really, really proud of myself.
That's good.
Yeah.
Fireman's carry is always good.
Yeah, I wasn't
Fireman's
pulling.
carries are scary. You're
You
gonna
gotta,
carry.
you gotta pull it. More pulling.
You need to pull.
Yeah, I often don't do the right thing.
You should say fireman's pullers.
Yeah. But yeah, it's not really a carry. It's like a flip.
It's too bad you can't do those in judo anymore.
What? Really?
Can't do them. Yeah, because you can't touch the legs.
What if you just?
I mean, there are versions that don't touch the legs.
Yeah.
I mean,
They're not
you
as
have to
good.
be
Yeah.
exceptional to do them. And if you, I mean, think about it. It's almost like in jiu-jitsu, you are taking a pretty significant risk by doing a fireman's carry.
Yeah. That's why they'll never expect it. I'm really excited.
I think some people that will work. Some people,
Yeah.
it's going to be a disaster. You're basically putting that guy on your back.
Of course. I mean, it'll be a disaster.
What's nice in
for most
judo
of them.
is that you don't care if they're on your back. As long as you smash them onto their back first before they choke you, you win the match.
Yeah, and I don't have to care that they're on my back if I don't want to.
I always thought that was the worst part about judo. Like if I had one objection about judo, it would be that they don't care if you get rolled through.
Yeah.
I think, now, I guess one response would be, well, if we were on the street, you'd be dead, right? Because that would. But a lot of times those guys, like, they really put themselves in a huge amount of risk
Yeah.
with the throws that they do.
Well, because the points that they're doing, or the throws that they're doing, are with the rules and context in mind. Where it's like, I just need to do this thing to win this match. If you take a regular judoka, they're not going to do that stuff in the street.
And I'm sure those guys that are they're only doing, it's kind of like 50-50 in judo and jiu-jitsu,
Yeah.
right? Like the guys that are doing 50-50 in jiu-jitsu in a high-level jiu-jitsu match,
Yeah.
if they were actually competing or rolling or whatever, fighting with somebody that was not at their level,
Oh,
they wouldn't do it. They would murder you, right? Like they wouldn't need to do 50-50.
yeah.
It's the same thing with like, if you picked up like, if Ono, you start picking him on him on the street.
Yoko Ono?
No, not Yoko Ono. Shohei Ono. I think it's his name. Anyway, he's like one of the best guys in the world right now.
At what?
Judo.
Oh.
If you started like, if he wanted to put you down on the street, he wouldn't have to do some crazy, judo throw. I mean, he does basic judo throws to everybody. He's so good. He doesn't care. you know. But I'm saying in general, when I watch judo and I see that, it makes me cringe a little bit because I'm like,
But you can't, like, judging judo on its street value is silly.
I know, but I'm saying, look,
Can I
that's a
tell
combat sport.
I know. Can I tell the one story I have about a judo guy?
Sure.
Alright, so I have a buddy, my former next door neighbor, Addison Webb. He's a judo black belt, like, he used to be really competitive as a kid.
What does that mean, really competitive? Does that mean
He competed a lot.
Where? On what level?
I don't know, national?
Really? How old was he?
I don't know. Since I've known him, he's done judo. And he was good, he used to compete, like not Olympic level, but like thinking about going to the team in Boston, I think.
Okay, so with Jimmy Pedro?
Yeah.
Wow, okay, so he's probably pretty good.
And so, where was it going? Oh yeah, so. I
So
think
one day
he
you
was
decided
in
to have a wrestling contest with him?
No, one day he was in a parking garage and some guy decides that he doesn't like him and approaches him with ill intent.
Yes.
And he like just stuck his thumb in the guy's eye, lifted him up, dumped him on his head, and walked away.
How big was this guy?
I don't know, but I mean, Addison's not that big. But he's good at judo. So it's like being like, oh, this won't work in the street. Well, like, now this judoka is allowed to poke you in the eye and
If you're
dump
like
you on
a
the head.
national level or international level athlete, I don't care what you do. Like, have you seen the guys that are like track and field athletes?
Oh, he did that too. He was a pole vaulter.
The guy is super athletic, right? Like, those guys,
Yeah, he's a specimen.
unless you really do know something,
But
they're
he
probably
knows,
just going to smush you like a grape.
he knows things too.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I like the thumb in the eye bit.
Yeah, I guess it went in deeper than he expected, he told me. So I've been not wanting to experience that ever since. But yeah, it took care of the situation, I guess. I don't really know if there were any consequences for it, but he seemed to be fine.
That was completely unpleasant. I didn't like doing that, Kevin. Humility, isn't that what you want to talk about?
Yeah.
Oh, wait.
Are we not online?
I think, no, your head's good. Okay. I think we're online. We're online. We have the green light.
Humility.
Humility.
Am I humble enough, do you think?
Humble enough.
Even with
Humbleness.
my dancing skills? I'm pretty humble, I
Are
think.
you the most humble person you know?
I don't know. Who's the most humble person I know?
Definitely me. I'm the most humble person I know.
Probably. I'm trying to think. What's funny about like humility is it's not like there's something that like an event where like a person is like the most humble person. I don't know. I usually associate like quietness with humility. Do you remember Scott?
No.
Stanford Scott?
Who?
Stanford Scott?
No.
He was pretty humble. But he was also just very neutral. I don't know.
Like beige. Like what does that mean? Neutral?
Like neutral, like the most neutral person on the planet. If I would say something mildly controversial,
Yeah.
he would just say the perfect thing that like gave no opinion from him at all. But it was, I don't know, he's fun. But
So why did you want to talk about humility?
I don't know. Well, I was thinking about like trying to figure out the difference between acting humble and being humble, and like how one could parse whether or not, you know, you're engaged with one or the other. Like is acting humble like the important thing? As long as you act humble, it's okay, or do you have to be like genuinely humble? Is it about like? Is it like pretending to be humble is like sufficient, or do I have to be like sincere?
Well, there's kind of like false humility.
Yeah, but it's also very important to be able to fake it, right? Like,
Well, it depends on your.
You gotta, like a kid should be able to fake it, you know? Like, if they're standing in front of the class, they gotta be able to.
There may be times where it's smart to be humble, like people who want to have like a good public perception of them. It's kind of nice not to brag about stuff. I don't know why. So let's Why are you asking the question? Like, in what context?
Oh, I was just meditating on it. And
On humility.
yeah, like that was something that I wanted to think about for the next like week.
Just for what? For what? But for no purpose other than to just ponder
It's
humility?
It's inner inspection, right? Like,
Do you consider yourself to be a humble person or a non-humble person or somewhere in the middle?
I don't know. Trying to figure that out.
You don't seem to me like you brag a lot.
Sometimes I do though, and it's taken a lot of practice to not.
Like, what did you used to brag about? What did you think of? If you said there was something that you wish you were more humble about, or at least less arrogant about.
Well, one thing I find myself doing, because I really like doing jiu-jitsu, right?
Oh yeah.
And so sometimes I'll find things that I think are cool, and I immediately want to tell people about it.
Okay.
And there's this weird line between like telling people that you found this awesome thing that you think is neat versus telling people that I found this little thing, like where it's like.
Oh, so yeah.
You know, it's. I don't know how much of that is like yeah, or versus like yeah, you know. I don't know if that makes sense. Because like I do stuff and I'm proud of the stuff that I do and I want to share it with people, but I don't necessarily know if the reason that I want to share it with people is honest, you know?
Well, I think there's something, I don't necessarily think that it's arrogant to kind of discover or invent something and want to share it and then, you know, get credit for your brilliance.
Well, what am I looking for? Like, am I looking for credit when it happens?
I don't know. You tell me. You tell us. What are you looking for? Why do you? I mean, when you tell people something, is it because you want them? And these aren't mutually exclusive. They can be a little bit of both or more. Do you want to say, "Hey, look at me, aren't I cool and brilliant because I came up with this stuff?" Or is it, "Hey, I think this can actually help you. You know, hey, try this out. I think this will benefit you."
Sometimes it's like, I did this awesome thing that I think is great.
Yeah.
And I'm amazed that I was able to do this thing.
Yeah.
And I want it to happen to you as well. Not just like, not the technique itself, but the finding of something. You know, where it's not like I'm out there repeating the same thing over and over all the time. Where like there's still, even when I train, there's still stuff to find that's worth being or experiencing joy for.
Okay.
You know, so it's a little bit of both.
All right. I mean, everybody likes to feel that appreciation, right? Get that credit for doing something that they think is cool, right? Like whenever my kids do something cool, like they build something or
I just want you to
draw something, they want that affirmation, right? Like, hey, Daddy, look at this picture that I drew. Isn't this awesome? Right?
Yeah.
So I don't know that I think everybody likes to get credit, right, for things that they think are inventive or creative or unique to them anyway, you know. I don't know if that makes you an arrogant person or
It's very like self-centered.
Well, I mean, you're a human being, so that you're going to be self-centered. I mean, nobody,
Hopefully like
even the people that are true altruists, such as they exist, do it because they feel some sort of pleasure, right?
Oh, really? That's a strong statement.
I think that is true.
All people who are altruistic do it out of self-interest?
It's out of some degree of, no, I didn't say self-interest.
Okay.
Well, maybe self-interest in the sense of like they feel a sense of fulfillment and satisfaction, right? I mean, some of it may just be, well, I was going to say, you know, you can donate things and get a tax break, but you know, that's just raw self-interest. That's a financial self-interest, right? That's not, you know, like, you know, all these super wealthy people are donating or creating trusts, right? Creating these charitable trusts. Mm-hmm. And everyone's like, oh, that's so nice. Like, these people are so. No, this is a giant tax dodge. This is a way for them to shelter, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars. When Jeff Zuckerberg or the Gates Foundation, what do? They create these foundations that are, you know, that they bequest, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars, then they put their kids in charge of them.
Yeah.
It's just basically a way to sit on top of, you know, and they can all be unwound. It's not like if I give all of my money to Yale or, you know, the New York City Public Library or something,
Yeah.
I can't, you know, like my kids can't go back and say, hey, no, now we're going to take it back. You know, now their tax laws are,
Yeah.
you know, better or whatever, you know? That's it.
Fun.
So, but if you like give everything up to some, I don't know, you give away all your money for real, you're probably doing it because, or some, you know, whatever it is, whenever you act charitably, I think there's a sense of satisfaction and fulfillment to that, right? Like you're doing some good for society, and you do that because you feel good. I don't know if anybody does it because, oh, maybe some people do it out of penance, right? They feel guilty, but that's still self-interested because you're trying to assuage your own guilt.
I've always felt guilty about like doing things for other people to feel good, like because
Why would that make you feel guilty?
Because it's a self-shaft.
Okay, so what?
Yeah, I'm not saying it doesn't.
That's a win-win. I think of that as win-win. Hey, I feel great. You feel better. We're all good.
It's, I guess, but then I don't like the idea of myself profiting off of someone else's misery.
In terms of your profit of their, in terms of like you feel better about yourself.
Yeah.
So what is your?
So my solution to this
Okay.
is to help the person, but feel almost like begrudgingly angry about it. Where like I feel like I'm put out by helping someone, but I do it because it's. So there was this person at CVS, and she was waiting outside.
Yeah.
And she asked me when she went in if she could have some money to buy a pregnancy test.
Oh yeah.
So I was like,
that's a scam.
Hold on. And so I like.
Did you buy her a pregnancy test?
So I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna give her any money, but so I bought a pregnancy test, right? Like worst case scenario.
Yep.
She's not pregnant and she has this worthless pregnancy test. Like in best case scenario, like I bought her a pregnancy test.
Right.
So I like gave it to her, but I was like kind of weirded out because I thought it might have been a scam. Right?
It's
so
definitely a scam.
It could have been, right? So I did it, but angrily. And I feel like that kind of assuaged my sense of guilt to some degree. So like I still did the thing, but I left, kind of feeling weird about it, like unsettled almost. But it was good. Like a net positive probably overall, at least not a net negative. I didn't cause.
I mean, she probably just sold it.
Maybe.
Or she went back inside and said, hey,
maybe.
Did you give her the receipt?
I don't recall.
I mean, there's definitely people who I don't like giving money to.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I almost never, I get angry when I see the people, if you ever see the people that are like at the parking lot, at the exit, and they have like their little kids with them. It's usually a woman, and she's got like a kid, 2 kids, there's one in the stroller, and then the husband's like around the side corner, you know, like kind of watching, just to, you know, protect them, whatever.
Yeah.
But she's essentially just, you know, marketing her kids. Like she's like, hey, here, take pity on my poor children.
Mm-hmm.
But it has the reverse effect on me because I think that she's exploiting her children.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and sometimes they're like school-age kids.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, why aren't they in school? Like, why are you, you know? So I don't like giving. I think it's just a big.
I think those are the perfect
scam.
people to donate to.
No, well, for you.
No, yeah, well, yeah, because then you're not really sure if you should feel good.
I don't. It's not that I feel good or bad. I just don't want to reward that conduct.
I mean, someone who is doing that is obviously not having.
That's kind of, it reminds me of the people in India who like, so reportedly who, you know, maim the kids or themselves or whatever it is in order to elicit some sympathy. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
But you know, like I don't.
It's a good way to.
But sometimes I feel like, hey, these people must be really desperate if this is what they're doing.
Yeah.
You know, so.
It's a weird mix of.
So you know what I do? I feel like I pay my taxes. So.
Good enough.
In California, your tax money does go to the people who at least want it. I don't know if they need it or deserve it, but it's not like some states where you know, there's either low tax, you don't pay any taxes, and there's almost no social services. And in which case, I would say, like, if you really wanted to, you know, be charitable, you'd have to like do it through some other organization. But yeah. No, but I think you're still gaining some degree of fulfillment, or at least guilt alleviation, when you in that system. you're kind of manipulating yourself, you know, emotionally in order to justify whatever hoops you need to jump through to give them some money.
It's a stupid mind.
But you're still doing it, more or less,
Yeah.
and you're still gaining some. But for whatever reason, you are still either because from some sense of obligation, you're still giving to people. You're still feeling good at it, getting some good at it, some psychic satisfaction.
It's a mild, I don't know. I just don't want to build a habit of, feeling good when other people don't.
But you're making them feel good too, right? That's you're filling their bucket. You're a bucket filler.
Yes, I mean it's good.
Or
it's good to help.
Fix, right?
It's good to help people. It's better when you help people to help people instead of to feel good. It's
yeah,
good
but
to
there's I don't. What
I'm
saying
not saying it shouldn't stop.
I'm just saying at the end of the day, there's lots of different reasons to help, right? Like it's all good. If you're helping, like it's all good.
Yeah.
But whether you're doing it out of some sort of financial obligation, you're doing it out of some sort of sense of guilt, you're doing it out of some sense of fulfillment, like some what we would call altruistic sense, whatever it is, you don't do it. I don't think that there is such a thing as pure altruism.
Really?
I don't think so. You always, like the altruistic sense, to me, and I could be totally wrong, I don't know, I just have never heard of one where, even the people who are saints, even the ones who martyr themselves, are doing it for some higher purpose in their minds.
Yeah.
I don't think let me be clear, I don't think that diminishes their sacrifice, right? Like, whatever. I mean, you can look at all the great saints of our time, and, whatever your opinion of their motives are, even the ones that have the purest motives, they're still doing it out of some sort of self-interest, right? But they're still doing good. I mean, good is good, right? Helping people is helping people.
Mm-hmm. It just depends on who your allegiances are aligned with.
I mean, some people could give away all their money because they don't want their ex-wife to get it, right? Or they don't want the government to get it, or they don't want, you know what I mean? You could do it out of bitterness. Well, you were doing something, at least with some potential for goodness. You're not doing it out of good motives per se, but.
So do motives not come in at all?
No, motives, I mean, that's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, you're still doing it out of, if I give away all my possessions to help out of some sense of solidarity or guilt or whatever it is, I'm still doing it because I have a motive to do it, right? So,
but like,
that's why I'm saying I don't think there's such thing, like if we define, maybe I'm just not defining altruism right. If we define altruism as doing something for the goodness, for the feeling of goodness that derives from doing the act itself, then I think that the definition makes sense. But if you define altruism as doing something without self-interest, I don't think that exists. That's what I'm trying to say, right? Maybe I'm wrong, I don't know. Maybe I'm just not thinking of enough examples of how somebody could do something that has no interest for them whatsoever.
I mean, I think people do stuff all the time that isn't in their own best interest.
Well, that's different. That's just acting irrationally. I mean, you could do something against your self-interest, well, as judged by someone else.
Yeah.
But that you, at the time, thinks is a good idea. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So. But I don't think, getting back to humility, how did we get onto altruism? What was the humility bit?
I don't know, you said something that set me off a little bit. You're like, don't believe in altruism. I think that's weird.
Oh, is that why? Why, do you believe in altruism?
Like, I get where you're coming from, where like, even like evolutionarily speaking, like altruism observed in animals, like where like bees will sting and sacrifice their lives to save the colony type thing. Like it definitely exists, but even that behavior is the idea that it will be beneficial to the group and to pass on their genes. And
you have to also wonder in that situation whether it's truly a voluntary act or it's a instinctual, involuntary act, right?
Yeah, but it's
so
definitely.
It's not like the bee's like for the colony and then stings and dies. It's like something's messing around and then there's something that like chemically makes it react.
Well,
and it stings and it dies, you know, and that's something that
Yeah.
evolved over a million years, or 10 million years, or 20 billion years, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just an instinctual response. I don't think a bee,
And we don't have
but
these
maybe it is sacrificing itself, I don't know. Maybe
Bees
some
have-
bees fly away into the,
Do bees have these instincts and humans don't?
I think any, I guess you can't, I think it's hard to generalize across species.
Yeah.
There are certainly some species that don't give a crap and will turn around and eat its own young, right? Like if you leave goldfish, like guppies, what are they, guppies? Is that baby goldfish?
I don't know.
Whatever the baby goldfish is, if you leave the baby goldfish in the tank with the adult goldfish, they just eat them all up.
Yeah, but that
Because
also,
they're just dumb, you know, they just,
that also has
and
to
they have
do
enough
with-
babies
they
that
have enough
eventually-
babies, right? So
they
that,
can't eat them all.
that
In a
has a lot
tank,
more
they
to
can.
do with, I think, the number of babies. I think when you have a smaller number of children, there tends to be more altruistic behavior, like with mammals.
Well, it may be, I mean, it's a question of, well, it doesn't matter how it evolved, right? Sometimes it may have been, having fewer is more advantageous for you,
Yeah.
right? Depending on the environmental situation,
Mhm.
right? It's, some species will have lots of offspring that may or may not be to its benefit
Yeah.
in a particular set of environmental circumstances.
Well, like me personally, if I have 10 kids and one's sitting in front of a train, I'm probably not going to jump in front of that train. But like, if all 10 kids are in front of that train, I'm probably going to do something.
Well,
about it.
I think the better way to think of it is not this. I mean, I think the better way to think of it is like if you live in a environmental situation where you have a high infant mortality or child mortality rate, or wife, you know, one mother and child mortality rate, you're going to tend to have more children in that environment because you know, you have to have more kids in order to have one survive.
Yeah.
If you live in a culture that requires you to have a male heir, then you're going to wind up having as many children as you possibly can in order to get that male heir. I keep saying heir. Male, I think of it as a word in my head, as it's, you know. So, you know, if I'm a guy with some property in, you know, Elizabethan England, then I need to, or whatever, Victorian England for that matter, I'm going to have a lot of kids until I have my male heir, right?
The first 3.
But nowadays, right, so nowadays, we have a much lower mortality rate, better medicine. People don't want to be saddled with the economic burden of having 10 children, so they have 2.
Well, that's because you're not allowed to put them to work anymore.
Even when you could put them to work, the reason you put them to work is because you're poor and you need the income.
Not necessarily. Hands are hands. Labor is labor.
Well, I mean, yeah, exactly. If you're like a peasant or a farmer and you need to have some cheap labor to pull, you know, you're going to put your kids to work. And plus, because what's that?
Make some.
Or you're going to send them to a factory if you can't afford to raise them yourself, or you know, you don't make enough money.
Tiny hands.
But I don't know how many. I mean, I knew children work in factories. I'm not sure what kind of factories they worked in. But in
like
any
chimney
event,
sweeps.
I think it always depends on your environmental situation,
Yeah.
and you adapt to that, right? Because
I feel like there's like a mathematical system, right? Like
I'm sure there is.
where it's how much of your genetic material is possibly present in this person, not literally, but like shared genetic material. And then, you know, from there, you calculate, is it worth the risk? You know, if I have my kid on the train tracks, it's 50% of my genes, I'm probably going to try and save it.
Unless it's your sister.
Well, if it's my sister, I think she and I share about 50%, right? So I would probably save her on the same level, right? I don't know, I forget.
I don't think that anybody
No, but then, no,
like
but then if
makes a
she
mathematical calculation in that
But
way.
then if she has a kid, right? Let's say she has one kid, right?
She's probably gonna say the kid over you.
Well, I don't know how the math works exactly, but this kid and I share 25% of
Yeah.
genes, right? So if it was between saving this kid and saving my kid, I'm probably going to save my kid. If it was between saving this kid and a stranger, I'm probably going to save this kid. If it was
Yes.
between this kid and like 3 strangers, I'm probably going to save this kid.
Probably yes.
Right? So
Yes.
there's like how much of me is in this person, and that informs
Well,
me
so part
as
of
to
that
how
is
much. I mean, I'm not saying we like sit
it's
down. and
not
calculate
robotic,
how
right?
far-
It's
Yeah.
not. I mean,
It's
you're gonna.
instinctual, I think. Like how
It's-
close is this?
But
person
you're
to
growing
me?
up with that person too, right? Like,
Yeah.
like if you had a kid and you didn't know you had a kid, and then
Yeah, you're not going to psychically, instinctively
Right.
try and
You're gonna have a relationship
yeah,
with
you're
these
going to have
people
a
too.
relationship and like.
It depends also on the family, because some people hate their families,
Yeah.
and if they saw their mother or father or
But
brother or
still, I
sister on the train tracks, they would like, cheer the train.
I don't know. There are some people I think would save their family out of sheer principle and then go back to hating them. You know. I don't know.
If you truly hate your family, you're not going to save them.
There are a lot of people out there, so it's a range, of course, but I don't know. Altruism. Yeah, I used to agree with you. I think where people only do things if they have their own skin in the game type. You know. Where why would I do something nice if it wouldn't in some way also benefit me? And for the most part, I think it's true because it results in like stable systems where if both people are engaged in something mutually beneficial, then that connection is, going to be stabilized by both of our needs, right? So,
I mean, you can do very foolish things, that are not in your long-term interest, but that you might think of in your short-term interest.
yeah.
Right? But there's that perceived interest, and I think in the moment that people do things, they may come to regret it later, but
Yeah.
they're usually acting in what they are perceiving to be their interest in that moment.
Yeah. Usually.
They may be mistaken, they may be drunk, or not in their right minds,
Yeah.
but they're still usually acting in their interest. I remember I had a case once where the guy, he was in his car speeding, doing like 100 miles an hour at 2 a.m. through the streets of San Francisco, and he was on some sort of hallucinogenic at the time, and he was having
Which one?
I think it was acid or something, but his thing was that he thought that there was a demon behind him chasing him, or a devil or something, and that when the lights were red, that meant that the demon was closer and about to get him. So he would accelerate through the red lights, and when they were green, he would still go fast, but he wasn't like hauling ass through there. And eventually he side or T-boned like a big bus. He walked out, he was fine.
Not sure.
But in the moment, you would say, like, that's crazy, right? I mean, this is not about altruism, it's just about how you act in the moment. He was acting in his perceived self-interest. It was not a good way to act. But if you think a demon is actually is behind you, about to drag you down to hell,
That's probably the best
getting
choice.
into an accident is probably not so bad, right?
Yeah. Yeah, don't do drugs
Yeah, just say no,
while
kids.
driving.
Or anytime, really. I mean,
What else?
well, go back to humility.
Humility.
I think you have to have
humility
some.
good?
Yeah, it's a virtue. To be humble is a virtue.
You're just taking that for just it's a virtue, so yeah, it's always good.
It must be good.
Why
It's
is
a
it
virtue. Hmm?
Why is it a virtue? Because it's good?
Humility is a virtue. Well, why is anything a virtue?
I don't know.
Because it brings you some degree of happiness,
Oh.
right?
Does-
It is a conduct, a course of conduct that will probably accrue to your benefit.
So humility is for my happiness or your happiness?
It's for basically everyone's happiness, I think. And God will be happy with you.
But
Therefore, you will go to heaven and be happy if you're a Christian.
But people like not humble people a lot, right?
Sometimes.
I can think of a couple not humble people that I like.
Well, it's not to say that people can't it goes back to like your perceived interests, right? Like, because, you can certainly observe that there are people who are not humble, who are popular, right? And maybe popular because they are not humble. But I think what a person would say is that in the long run, that doesn't accrue to anyone's benefit. In the short run, it may, right? Like in the short run, being the arrogant prick may bring you a lot of money. Like that might be a character or a trait that other people in the world who are also not attuned to their own happiness or the happiness of society will, admire that person.
Mm-hmm.
But
Could it go the other
it's
way?
kind of like, it's like, here, I'll give you an example. Maybe it's a bad example. You have like fighters, athletes who take on a pose. Muhammad Ali, for example, in the beginning was a very arrogant fighter. He was. You know, he talked all sorts of crazy shit about his opponents, and he was like really mean about it.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that was, you know, getting into their heads, right? Kind of like Conor McGregor gets into his opponent, gets him so mad and so frustrated that they lose something of their composure in and out of the ring. But you can also have that attitude sort of in general, right? Where you're just kind of like, you're a rebellious person.
Mm-hmm.
And other people might admire you because, hey, you don't, you know, you're not, you know, in Ali's case, he was not like this subservient, you know, African-American man, right? And so other people, other men could be like, hey, I admire that in Ali, right? Like he's speaking his mind, and like that's rare in 1950 or 1960 in America for a black guy to be like that outspoken.
So that's good.
Well, I mean, but you know, hear me out, right? Like, so I'm giving you some examples, right? Now, I don't know enough about Ali to say like, was he trying to make a social statement in that moment, or whether, or maybe it came to that later. Maybe in the beginning, I don't know enough about it, but I know that he had a lot of, he bragged a lot, right? He at least appeared not to be very humble. He had a pose, like an affectation. Maybe he really was arrogant. I don't know, but there are people that could say like, hey, you know, like I admire that.
Yeah.
Right? And you could say like, well, he's not being humble, right? And he's standing up for himself at least, you know, and people can look at that. Yeah, maybe that is it. Maybe Malcolm X is the same way. Like, hey, he's a guy who's ready to stand up and speak his mind, intelligent guy, radical. You know, we admired him.
I think he was pretty humble though.
Yeah, but he didn't, well, he wasn't personally like arrogant. Whereas Ali was like, I'm the best ever, and you know, greatest of all times, and all this stuff. So maybe there is kind of a mixed.
So could it be possible to be too humble, or is it always good to be more humble? Right? Like, because if it's a virtue, is it one of those things where like honesty, right? There's like types of honesty, and you can be very, very honest, and that would also
Maybe too honest.
Yeah, like
Unnecessarily honest.
almost to your detriment.
That's true.
Do you think that's possible with humility?
I think maybe it is. Maybe it could come both ways. Maybe arrogance isn't always. Maybe a performative arrogance isn't always so bad. You know, I like to think, without really knowing Ali's biography, that he wasn't that arrogant. I mean, he converted to Islam, which I think is premised on humility.
Yeah, it's submission to God is its first principle.
You know, maybe he had this evolution in his thinking. I don't know. I'd like to find out. Maybe that's my next project. But you know, there are some people who are really just arrogant people, and I don't know that you are. So here's my experience with that. I don't get the sense that those people are truly happy.
Do you think they're truly arrogant?
No, I think in my experience that people that are arrogant, that give you that arrogance, are hiding something. They are hiding an insecurity, almost always. In my experience, everyone has their own experience. Maybe you've met somebody who is just perfectly arrogant. But in my experience, there's usually some core of insecurity which requires them to perform some degree of superiority over other people. Because you can be superior and just be superior, right? And that speaks volumes for itself, right? Like if you're just awesome at what you do, everyone knows that. You know, especially if you're an athlete or, you know, a public figure, or you work with other people. You know, maybe if you're out in the woods doing your own thing and chopping down trees better than anyone else, and no one's watching you, you got to come out and brag about it a little bit. Otherwise, no one will know what you do.
Well, the thing
but if you're like an athlete or whatever, going out and talking about like I'm the smartest person ever, or I'm the best at this or whatever, like we can see what you do, right? Like the numbers will speak for themselves, right? Like you saying that you're the best or not the best doesn't actually add anything to it, right? Other than as a performance, other than as some sort of chest beating that you think you need to do outside and above of what your actual record demonstrates for everyone.
What about beyond just like them speaking about themselves and just like their overall mannerism, right?
Well, sometimes a level of detachment can be seen as arrogant, right? I don't think that makes you arrogant. The person who doesn't want to engage, who doesn't want to speak, that may have something else to do, you know, some other thing. But like, I'm always like, to me, when I see somebody who's like always talking about themselves, I'm just like, well, if you're really good at what you do, you don't need to like beat your chest, because you're really good at what you do. We all know it.
Yeah, but there's also this weird thing where like people get uncomfortable if you don't act as arrogant as they think you should almost. Or like if you're overly humble, it feels almost like fake-ish. There's a way to do it. Like there are people who are really, really elegant about it, and they're good enough with words to where it's like almost like a game. But that's a skill that like needs to be developed by most people, I think.
I've heard of encounters with, and I've had, I guess, a few encounters myself with people who, I might, or other people might put up on a pedestal, and you wouldn't be surprised if they acted arrogantly.
Mm-hmm.
But in general, they've always acted very humbly, I guess, graciously, where they didn't lord that superiority over you. That's whether that's social or financial or professional superior, whatever it was, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I could give you, I was able to meet and kind of work with a couple times the head of Johnson & Johnson, right? Super nice guy, like the most down to earth, humble guy, just so he's like your grandfather, right? It's just awesome. Now that could have been a total act, I don't know. But he was very sincere. I mean, I've met a lot of people in business and in law. And the people who are like the biggest douchebags are usually the people who they can't approve because they have such to me, this is my little pop psychology. they have such a core of insecurity that they can't be satisfied with their own success or whatever they're good at. And therefore, they feel like they need to keep proving themselves. And usually they're doing that by being a douchebag. Right? I mean, if you're comfortable in your own success, I'm always confused by people who are successful in the world, but that are cruel or to other people.
The Ellen DeGeneres incident.
I don't understand why, if you're astronomically popular and successful, that you need to be disrespectful or cruel to people, right? Like, if anything, you should be kind. You should be extra kind, right? Because why? To me, to explain it, I have to say, there has to be some sort of flaw within your own vision of yourself that you can't get past, that you have to feel like you have to be that way to people. Because there's no good logical reason to do it.
Do you have a responsibility to be kind to people when you're successful?
I don't know if you have a responsibility, right? I mean, and people can be whatever they are, right? I mean, but at some point, if you're not kind to people and you're a D-bag, right, it will sometimes come back to hurt you.
Yeah.
People will not stand up for you. They won't get your back because you're a terrible person.
But sometimes in the cases where
that doesn't always happen.
Yeah, when you're not at risk for that to happen, right? Where you're almost untouchable, right? In which case,
No one's untouchable.
I think a lot in certain situations, some people feel that they are,
Yes.
and so act in a
I think
certain
that reveals character in somebody. That's what I'm saying, right? Like, if you act, first of all, whether you're successful or you're just starting off or you had some disappointment in your life, I think you should always still be kind because it doesn't cost anything really.
Yeah, but I feel like the only way you can be truly kind, where you know that that it's coming from a good place, is if you're not sure whether or not you're doing it because you might face negative repercussions if you don't. I feel like we say that when you have power, it kind of reveals your true character, right? And I believe that it does. And I believe that only by having a position of power can you actually know for sure whether or not you are a kind person.
Well, but you could be, have no power and still be an exceptionally kind person.
But if you don't have power and the reason that you're being kind can't be differentiated between I'm doing it because I'm good or I'm doing it because if I don't, I'm not going to have any friends to help me if things go wrong.
Well, if you already have no friends and you are still kind, then you are a fundamentally
it's
kind
weird.
person.
Wait, what?
Well, you can so there's examples of people who, have no money, they're homeless, whatever, and they are still, they'll see you drop your wallet on the ground and they'll give it back to you.
Yeah.
That to me that's a person of character. That's a person who nobody would blame. Nobody would blame that starving person from taking your wallet, or that homeless person from taking. Maybe somebody would blame him, but
I personally wouldn't blame them, right? You could see this, like, hey, this Kevin has lots of money, he's got a place to go, and he has a car, and he has, a job, and that wallet is a gift from God.
Nah, that's a pull in the karmic slot machine.
No, but what I'm saying is, you could have a person who has little to nothing, who can still extend some kindness, and it doesn't seem to help them,
I believe that does exist.
and they do it out of the goodness of their heart. That's why that's what we call altruism.
I believe that is a possibility, but for you to know for sure that it's not, like that you're not doing it out of some sense of self-interest. I feel like
It's always out of self-interest. We've already established.
No, like when you're in a position of power, right, and you're among people who you believe can't do anything for you and isn't going to affect your life at all. That's a situation where it's not against your self-interest to act rudely, and it's just you do whatever you want versus being.
Yeah, and if you act like a terrible person, then you are revealing your character.
Yeah, but like
if you act like a kind person, then you are revealing your character.
Yeah, you are revealing your character, but like only in that situation can the character be revealed for sure.
I mean, I don't feel like there's ever anything that can be ever.
Yeah,
I mean,
no one's ever truly.
You can't really talk in absolutes or really say like what someone's purest motivations or whatever your own purest motivations are. You're not totally transparent to yourself. Yeah. You're a bundle of impulses and instincts and thoughts, and there's no certainty here. There's like best guesses, right? I mean, there's no formula. There's no mathematical formula for human motivations, right? We like to think that there are. We like to think that we all act rationally. That is false. That is totally false. That is easily disproven.
But we have to have some standard by which we.
I think it's good to be humble because there's lots of good reasons to be humble. It keeps you, if you really get to the point where you're so kind of satisfied with yourself. I'm the best, right? I can't do any better than I'm just like nobody can ever beat me. They say pride goeth before the fall, right? When you really think that you're the best, there's a tendency to take the foot off the gas, tendency to not be motivated to work as hard as you maybe worked on your way up. This is why champions always get dethroned, right? At some point,
champions always get dethroned.
Yes, so it's also because they get old.
Yeah,
but they get dethroned earlier. Something bad happens to them earlier because why? Because they get a little full of themselves.
Oh, that's the Conor story right now, right?
The what?
The Conor McGregor. He just got punched a lot.
I think it's really hard in general to have that much success and not get a little sidetracked.
Yeah.
I think the distractions and the temptations of having that kind of money. And these guys are disciplined in some sense, but MMA fighters, in my experience, are not always the best ground. Some of them are, right? I don't mean to generalize too much, but very often they're not the most stable, most grounded individuals.
Conor was at least always clear from the beginning that he was doing it for the money.
Everybody does it for the money. Nobody gets punched in the face just for the sake of being punched in the face.
That's not always true.
Yes.
Probably nobody at the highest level.
There are people who will fight just for the fun of fighting, but you're not going to get very far. The best guys go and do the things that they do because you get paid.
Mm. Weird. But people don't start MMA to get paid one day. I guess some people.
Yes, they do. Some people do it because they think it's cool.
Yeah.
I don't think you get very far. Just by being like, hey, I just want to fight for them. Some people do well, right? I think of the Diaz brothers. Those are guys that I think if you just paid them $10, they'd go out to the parking lot. If they weren't MMA superstars, they'd go out and fight for $20,
The younger one did it for a burrito, so at least that's the story that.
Oh, in the beginning, yeah, when you're hungry, right? And someone offers you food, you do a lot of dumb things when you're hungry, right?
Yeah.
It's not dumb because you're going to get fed. It wasn't for winning, though. It was for just fighting, right?
No, it was just for training.
Yeah.
They had a burrito cart outside the training facility.
We'll fight for food?
Yeah.
I don't see, your question that interests me is what's the downside of being too humble? Sometimes there are people that don't take credit for the things that they deserve credit for.
The Wozniak situation.
And so they don't, they don't get rewarded financially or whatever, professionally, because they don't take credit, or they're not as much, they don't protest when someone else takes credit.
I like protesters. I was talking about Wozniak and the Steve Jobs situation, where it's like, you know, I guess I've been told that Wozniak did most of like the technical work.
Oh, for sure, yeah. Well, I don't think Jobs was technical. I mean,
he did marketing.
He was a marketing genius.
But everyone kind of knows like of Jobs more than Wozniak.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But anyway, that's what marketing's all about, isn't it?
I mean, that's another example of somebody who's was a total douchebag. Is a total douchebag.
But like douchebaggery works sometimes.
Well, but the thing is, here's the thing. I never got the sense, and when I read things about him, I never got the sense that he was ever satisfied or happy with his life. He was when I read about him, he strikes me as a profoundly unhappy person.
Does that make you feel good or bad?
It makes me feel sad for somebody who can't appreciate their own worth, or appreciate, like, he's a guy, right? He disowned his own daughter, right? And treated her like shit, and for no good reason, right? Like, it wouldn't have cost him anything, to actually be a decent human being. He got nothing out of that.
What do you think he like created his sense of self-worth from the money or from his relationship?
I think he was a person. I think this is all pop psychology. I don't know what I'm talking about, but I will stand by the idea that I don't think that he was a very joyful person. Maybe at the end he might have been a little bit better.
Joy's not for everybody.
Well, hear me out, right? To me, there's very little to recommend a life. I mean, he worked hard, right? I mean, he was a hard worker. He accomplished a lot in his life. There's not much to recommend that type of life if you don't get any happiness out of it.
But he did so much good.
Yeah, but for him personally, if he didn't appreciate that good, then that's kind of almost tragic.
But like, he wouldn't have done all that if he didn't get something out of it, right? Like, that was your original point.
I mean, what was he looking for? Some sort of approval from a societal approval? I mean, that to me is like, society is not a person or a thing that can give its approval.
But a lot of people act as though it is.
I think they're mistaken. I think they're placing an emphasis on. I mean, society is what? It's not a thinking thing. I mean, you can say like, oh, if I look at society, it approves of me because it buys my products, or it has made me rich, or it hates me because I get a lot of hate mail on the internet or something. I don't know, right? Like, a lot of individual people can have feelings about you, right? But you don't know any of them.
Society's like an imaginary friend.
It kind of is, right? And so if you're doing everything for the approval of some group of people that you don't know anything, and they don't know anything about you other than like maybe something that you've said or done or made or what have you. I mean, if you get a lot of happiness out of it, I think maybe misplaced, right? You have a lot of people who get that approval of, that celebrity. But it's a very, the thing about celebrity is that I don't think people that are like, these fans, like the people like, or followers, I don't think they actually, because they don't know you.
Yeah.
They can't actually like you for you.
Yeah.
They like you because of something that they see in you that reminds them of themselves. Yeah. You're fulfilling some sort of wish fulfillment in them, not you. Like, they want to be you, they want to be like you, what they think you're like. But they don't know you, right?
I was watching like this thing on Jonah Hill and like what he went through in his late teens and early 20s. So he was so popular, and
what was he in? Jonah Hill?
Superbad,
okay.
Wolf of Wall Street. Like, he was known as like the funny fat guy.
Yeah. Okay, I know who it is.
And I guess like when that is the reason that you're famous, it just totally fucked with him. Like
you don't see too many happy and well-adjusted child stars.
It's just this weird thing, because like they have this idea of like who he is, and it's just like this character that he's created, but it's not like this character for a movie. It's the character he's created for his life, and then he's just like this guy, but like this weird not person thing. And so he's like sitting in there like figuring out like who he really is, and just like there's just the whole world telling him that he's just this like funny fat guy. And it sounds terrible. It sounds like it's not fun at all, and I don't know. It sounds scary.
I mean, a lot of these people, like you see, like a lot of big, successful musicians, actors, artists, politicians. I mean, politicians actually, I think, are the rare breed who actually live for and are satisfied by. But they're actually doing it because they're narcissists. They only love themselves. But yeah, I don't think. I'm not sure that even Steve Jobs was actually. I see what did act arrogantly. But like I said, I think that disguises something that's lacking inside of you. That's why you gotta live for Jesus, Kevin.
I've been recommended it. It doesn't sound all too bad.
I think if you actually, I mean, this is an interesting thought experiment. If you actually live the life that is recommended by Jesus, like if you did the Jesus life, like you know how we do, like if you do the fast or you do the, you know, if you live the Jesus lifestyle, I mean, it would be an interesting thought experiment to do that.
I've hung out with more than people, gamblers, you know.
You gotta hang out with the.
You know, I've done that. What's next?
No, you gotta live the life of like almost like self-abnegation, where you are sacrificing yourself for everyone else all the time. But you also gotta talk about how you're the son of God.
I can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you can't keep like you know he lived a life of poverty, so you can't raise money off of that.
I can do that too.
All right. We'll try it out. See what happens. Your hair is already kind of close.
I've been told that a fully integrated human being is a Messiah, so that's the goal.
Just remember how the Messiah ended up. So like, just you know,
famous.
Be careful. Yeah, very famous and very dead.
Nah. That'd be weird. If I go crazy and start telling people that I'm God, will you just like pat me on the head and?
We're all God, Kevin.
Well, it's nice of you.
But I'm mostly God. I'm more God than anyone else.
We're all a little bit God. Theology is fun.
I don't know that I've ever. I mean, there are definitely instances where people maybe are a little too humble, but
sometimes it's annoying.
I don't know
like,
that
bro.
it actually hurts them all that much. You know what I mean? Like I don't know that if you find somebody who's humble, they don't usually seem to be unhappy. I mean, is that true? Maybe it's not true. Because there are people that really do have a low self-esteem, and they are like.
Yeah, like what's the difference between like humility and depression?
Yeah. Well, maybe that's where it shades into where you're almost too humble, right?
Yeah.
Where
it's like
where you don't think you're worthwhile at all.
Pathological.
Where you won't take credit for anything because you think you're worthless.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think that's humility. Humility to me is, here, let's put it this way. Humility is actually, I think a prerequisite of humility is that you are actually good at something.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Humility only comes from positions of power.
Not power per se, but maybe achievement in some degree.
Achievement? What's the difference?
Like
achievement equals
well, I mean, you
status,
could be really good at
power.
jiu-jitsu and not be powerful.
Yeah, but you're more powerful than the person who's not good at jiu-jitsu in the same.
But that's not like I'm talking about like societal power. You know, you could be like
you have a rank. Like that's literally what that means.
I mean, but that doesn't. To me, I don't.
That's what that is. That's power.
It's not.
You have a little.
I think of power like money power. Like I get shit done power. Like this is not power. Like
power,
being on the mat.
Power
is not,
comes in different forms.
That's
like
true.
You've chosen to be a part of this community, and you gradually accumulate whatever it is that gives you that sort of ability to tell people to do stuff.
But you think about the people who are the most powerful people in jiu-jitsu, and they're not necessarily the best people who are on the mat.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The people who have the most influence
Yeah.
are not necessarily the people who can like wreck shop. And there are a lot of people who can wreck shop and they have like zero influence over this work.
Like Helio had all the power when he was alive, but like you probably could have taken him in a fight. You just wouldn't because you would have the
No, because he had leverage and nobody else knew how to use it. Okay.
No, it's because he had sons and they would murder you if you did anything wrong. Like for real.
I don't know if they can murder.
I think they would. If you did something wrong enough.
I never heard about them ever murdering anybody. There were a lot of people who like
you saw them like
aliens.
break some guy's arm for like slightly resisting.
That's not murder. That's totally different.
That is an overreaction. So I'm just scaling it
He had a
up.
bad temper.
Scaling
He
it
tried.
up.
I mean,
You know,
yeah, but no. I mean, there's a difference between breaking somebody's arm and murdering somebody.
What's that?
Well, the person's still alive after I break their arm.
Okay,
That's
so
not murder,
But
therefore.
are they? In what ways?
He doesn't
are they
murder
the same?
anybody. I've never heard of a
In what-
Gracie, any family member, maybe, I don't know, there's a
Oh,
lot.
I haven't heard of any,
But that actually went out and murdered
Oh,
somebody.
no. I mean, if someone told me, I wouldn't.
I think you're building up a big straw man here. I think my point is that when I think of like power, I don't necessarily mean like there's a lot of guys that are powerful people, right? Like there's guys you wouldn't want to mess with on the street because they'll like break you in half.
You mean physical power?
Physical power.
Oh yeah.
But that to me is not.
Oh yeah, it's not real power.
That's not.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
that's power in a very limited sense, right? Like you're right. The big guy in the room, or the guy that's the most skillful at jiu-jitsu in this little room, has some degree of power. They may not have influence though.
Yeah,
Right.
but like if the president of wherever were to come in and he was wearing a white belt and he really wanted to learn jiu-jitsu, he'd probably show you respect because like in this
And I would show
space,
him respect too
of
because
course, in real life
he had me arrested, and he probably has a Secret Service detail
in
ready
real
to
life,
kill
he
me.
has real power, but if he was a good person, I think, and he knew the ways of people, like he would treat you with the level of
I
respect.
mean, this is like Vladimir Putin. If Putin came in right now and said, "Hey, Rich, I'm in town. Can you show me some jiu-jitsu?"
Yeah, we would show
I
him.
probably wouldn't break his arm, no
Yeah.
matter what he did,
Yeah,
because I'm sure that the security service would have it.
and
you
he
know,
would
something to
probably
say.
bow to you because that.
He would not bow to me. I would bow to him.
Both, right?
Putin doesn't bow to
You
anyone.
don't think so in judo?
No,
You don't think Putin bows to people in judo?
no,
I would think that he bows to people. in
definitely
judo.
not. They all bow to him.
I'm sure they bow to him. I'm sure he bows to other
He didn't
people.
bow to anybody.
I don't believe that.
Well, we can check the video to see if he's ever bowed. If there's ever any video evidence of him bowing to anybody,
In a judo gi.
we're out.
Or I'll take that too. Yeah.
What
Power.
was I gonna say?
Power.
Real humility comes from. I meant more like achievement, right? Feeling like you're good at something. I think, there's the attitude that I was getting to. I wasn't making a big statement. Was you have the person who is like the master of something, and when you talk to them, they're not like I'm the master. They're usually like I'm trying to figure something out. They're like the eternal student. They have that like mindset of being like always learning, right? That doesn't mean they won't yell at you for messing up or saying you're stupid, right? They're not saying like, oh, we're all the same. We're all students, and we all are equal. And they usually are not like that. They're usually just like, themselves, they say, yes, I have achieved a lot, but I am still always learning and growing. Right?
Yeah.
That's the kind of humility I think I appreciate.
Regular old, run of the mill, straight off the shelf.
I mean, I think that's a good thing. I always appreciate that when someone's like, where you have like Sir Isaac Newton, who, I don't know what the exchange was, but somebody praised him. He said, if I've seen more than others or further than others, it's only because I stand on the shoulders of giants.
That was Einstein.
That's like,
That was Einstein.
no, that was Newton.
That was Einstein.
I'm pretty sure it was Newton.
Pretty sure it was Einstein.
Einstein may have said it too.
I can't wait to learn this new thing. What's it gonna be? Isaac or what's his name? Albert. I hope I'm right. Something about the shoulders of giants. Some of these shoulders right here. Wait, look. I'm a grappling hook.
Oh,
Were we both right?
no, we're both wrong.
Nice.
The attribution, apparently, to Bernard of Chartres.
What?
In 1159, John wrote in his Metallogicon, Bernard of Chartres used to compare us to dwarves perched on the shoulders of giants. He pointed out that we see more and farther than our predecessors, not because we have keener vision or greater height, but because we are lifted up and borne aloft on their gigantic stature.
Yeah, and then Albert Einstein quoted him, right?
However, according to Umberto Eco, the most ancient attestation of the phrase dates back to Priscian, cited by Guillaume de Conches. According to medieval historian Richard William Southern, Bernard was comparing contemporary 12th century scholars to the ancient scholars of Greece and Rome. It starts blah, blah, blah. The phrase also appears in the work of the Jewish Tosaphist Isaiah DiTrani from 1180 to 1250.
What's his status?
And then we have, by the 17th century, it had become commonplace. Richard Burton, in the second edition of The Anatomy of Melancholy in 1624, says it, blah, blah, blah. George Herbert. Isaac Newton remarked in a letter to his rival Robert Hooke, dated February 5th, 1676, blah, blah, blah. If I've seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants.
By who? That was what he said?
Yes, but he was, apparently he was,
He's quoting the guy.
yeah, he's referring back. This was like
It was
common,
yeah.
I mean, this was something that, I guess, Samuel Taylor Coleridge,
People have been making fun of dwarves since forever.
Friedrich Nietzsche talks about it,
Nice.
and let's see.
No Einstein? You're not going to throw Einstein in there? Not
I'm
even
trying to
for-
find Einstein. I'm trying to save you here. Stephen Hawking's compilation of works by Copernicus, Galileo, Kepler, Isaac Newton, and Einstein's title On the Shoulders of Giants.
Oh, that must be. Dang it. Stephen Hawking.
I mean, I don't. Einstein may have said it.
Did you at least include it in your Google search? Just throw in an Einstein. Einstein shoulders giants. That's all you need. And then find the first website that validates my claims. Oh, thanks. Sorry.
It's still nothing.
Nothing.
Let me see if I can find anything.
Oh dear.
I mean, the first one here is Sir Isaac Newton. Although I'm wrong. I mean, I admit that he
No,
was not the first person to say it
You
for
were
sure.
righter. You were righter than I
I
was.
was more rightist.
Rightist. Corrector.
I mean, although the person when I was reading about Sir Isaac Newton, it sounds like he was actually using that very sarcastically.
Oh,
So
really?
I don't know what the real story is, but yes, that's the kind of maybe he wasn't really being humble. I don't know. Maybe that was my point, that he was being humble by saying that, but that suggests that he was not being humble. He's actually being very arrogant.
Slightly
So
sarcastic.
maybe he was not a good example.
I feel like I don't know why I get that sense of humility and images of Albert Einstein.
I mean, he was a guy. I don't think that I've ever heard, and maybe this is totally wrong. Like he's been dead a long time. Who knows what he was really like in person?
Einstein?
He doesn't sound like he's a very arrogant person.
No, he had a funny voice, didn't he?
A what?
A funny voice.
I don't know. I don't remember ever hearing him speak.
I remember.
I wasn't born yet. Okay, just an FYI. Okay.
No, but they used
He
to
died. I think I'm pretty sure before I was born.
Not Looney Tunes, but the Animaniacs, where they had like a parody of Einstein in it.
I don't remember
They
that.
like go through the equation like E equals MC squared, and he had a funny voice. That's what I know about Einstein.
That's how you know about it.
That was a good episode. Anyway.
I don't know. I always appreciate humility in someone. That's usually a good sign of good character.
I appreciate not humility.
Nobody really likes the arrogant. Who likes arrogant people? Who likes
no,
that?
I don't like arrogant people.
You know
but
who like arrogant people? Other arrogant people.
No, what I like is someone who knows that they're not like, the man, right, or the woman.
Maybe they are the man though. What if they are the man?
But they don't think that they are, but they're willing to like adopt that attitude in the hopes that they will grow into that person, right? You see that with like Ethan does this, right? Not to like personally.
Oh, you're calling out Ethan now?
but he'll walk into the gym like let's go. I'm ready to go. I will roll with anybody in this room, and I will tap every single month. And it's like it's funny. I like it. I enjoy it. Sometimes on a bad day, it's not as funny, and then it takes a little bit of self-regulation. But like it's nice, I think, to have that energy where like it is sometimes like it can rub the wrong way if you
I
don't
think it's at
know
best
him.
amusing, totally unnecessary. Like it's funny maybe the first time.
Yeah.
But I mean, whatever. I mean, I don't think it's you know what? He is lucky that he is in a small and relatively tolerant environment, because that kind of attitude, if you are in a wider mixed company, as it were, that will get you rubbed up.
It'll get checked. And it gets
Hard.
checked. He gets checked all the time, and he keeps showing up. And
Well, but there's a difference between having your instructors and your training partners who do that to you,
Yeah.
and then just having a bunch of random
Well, yeah,
strangers
It is weird.
and like really punish you
He's pretty good where like I don't know why we're still talking about him.
because you pulled him up, you brought him up.
You know, when we have a bigger group, he's humble. When he meets new people, he's humble. He acts humble. He acts very humble, right? When he meets new people. But then when you get to know him, then he starts to get comfortable.
Yeah,
Then
I mean,
he
that's
starts
how it
to
is,
joke.
right? He's like a little kid.
Well,
you
that's
know?
the thing.
He's on his
I'm
best
not-
behavior in
but-
the beginning, and then it, gets to know you.
Do you think that's the case though, or is it like when he is over here, he feels like he should be this way? Like
I don't
how
know.
do
You have to
tell?
ask him.
You can't tell.
I mean, I'm not offended by it, but I
Yeah.
mean, I know that there would be people who would be offended by it,
Wait,
or might be offended by it.
by
Having that kind of boastful attitude, even
I don't think anyone's gotten offended by it.
annoyed, offended.
Annoyed,
I'm not
yeah.
saying if they have or haven't. I'm saying I can definitely
Yeah.
imagine that,
It
you
has
know, happening
everyone-
in another place.
Everyone's. I mean, it's happened here. You know?
So, I mean, I don't think it can be, look, I mean, there's a way to do it and there's a way to not do it. And you can be funny.
But he's practicing. You know, he's learning. He's
No,
getting
it's
to the
not
point
faulty.
where.
Look, whatever story you want to tell yourself in your head
Yeah.
and get yourself amped up to come and train or do whatever it is that you need to do,
Yeah.
I mean, there's no problem with that. Like, we all motivate ourselves in different ways, and you know, like, there's no skin off of my back. You know, like, the mat doesn't really lie, as it were. Like they say, ball doesn't lie, right? Like in basketball, like, if you're good, you're good.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what you say.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, you know, like, everything that you do or say, like, over there outside on the street is irrelevant to when you get onto the mat. And whatever stories you like to tell yourself or stories you like to tell other people, whatever fictional life that you are living,
Yeah.
you know, like,
The best life.
when you come on, it's true of every actual activity in the world.
Yeah.
You can tell yourself, it's also often helpful to, like, tell yourself a little story,
Mm-hmm.
more or less fictional, about, like, what you are and what you intend to do, or what, you know, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And that could amp you up and be totally positive. But when you get here,
Yeah.
then there's that's reality.
Well, is it?
And,
what do you
and it doesn't matter what you say. I mean, it does matter in the sense of, like, if you can amp yourself. Like, when you go out and compete, it's good to kind of get in the mindset of, like, yeah, I am the best. Like, there's nothing wrong with that,
Yeah.
you know, but
Would it be better if he came in or if someone came in? We should get away from. If someone came in and was like consistently like, oh, I suck, I'm the worst. Like my jiu-jitsu is terrible. Like, oh, there's nothing I can do no matter who I roll with. I'm garbage all the time. Is that better or is that? I feel like that's just as annoying personally.
I think it's annoying. Anything to, beyond a certain point, right? I mean, if someone says when they first come in, I don't know why I do jiu-jitsu, I'm bad at it. And then they stop there and they come and train.
Yeah.
Okay, whatever, I don't care.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to tell yourself. You want to tell yourself you suck? Fine, I don't care. You're going to train?
Well,
Great.
the thing
If you
is,
want to tell yourself that you're, like, the best ever, okay, fine.
But
Don't
what-
tell me about it, well, like, the whole time that we're rolling, though.
but what if they're only saying it because they know that humility is valued in jiu-jitsu?
I don't,
Does it matter?
I mean, there's a certain point where we do things because it
We just
makes
want-
things, we want to, like, live in a society.
Yeah.
And it's beneficial to everyone that you, like, if you walk around and boast all the time about how awesome you are,
Yeah.
then you're just inviting everyone to, like, show you that you are not the best thing ever,
Yeah.
right? And
Well,
so,
That could be valuable.
in what way?
To like, you know, if you really want to be tested, maybe that's the best way to get tested.
No, but tested for what? Tested for being a douchebag? 'Cause
No, like
that's what
for
people are
how
gonna-
awesome you are at your thing. You know, like if you're
Or you could just go compete. Or you could just go do whatever the thing is that you want to do and see what, like, talking about it. Like, so I would draw the distinction between, like, fine, you're Conor McGregor, you're Gordon Ryan, you're, Barry Bonds. I mean, I don't know, whatever
Barry
athlete.
Bonds.
Yeah, Barry Bonds. I don't know. I'm
Gordon
thinking of
Ryan.
arrogant actually. He was pretty arrogant. And deservedly so. Like, he's one of the best ever, right? Whatever. I'm not picking on him. I'm just saying, like, athletes that are arrogant that come to mind.
yeah. I would have gone Jordan.
Jordan,
Yeah.
whatever, okay, although I don't know that he walked around and was, like, beating his chest and said he was the best ever.
Really?
I think he went out and proved that he was the best ever
I think
every
he-
night on the court.
I think there was a fair amount of chest beating. I don't know. From the stories I've heard.
I mean, there's a whole big long documentary,
Yeah.
and he definitely was.
He was the best.
he wanted to be the best, and he was the best, and he still, I would say, is the best.
Yeah.
But having said all that, what I was gonna say is, those guys can talk trash because there's like some sort of competitive advantage that they derived, or either by getting into your head, right, getting into their opponent's head and making them angry or making them lose their composure. They would get you out of your game by like talking so much trash, right? And I think they're, to that extent, it's useful, right? It's useful sometimes in a competitive environment to say or do things that like throw the other people that you're competing with off. That's useful. That's gamesmanship.
So should it be done?
Yeah, there's no problem with that. I don't have a problem with that.
But
I mean, it's also entertainment, right? Like, there's a reason why Conor McGregor, there's a lot of guys that were very successful, were just as successful as Conor McGregor in MMA.
so humility is good unless not being humility.
Well, there's kind of a couple different facets, right? Like, I can, in the privacy of like this training room, right? Like, you can imagine, right? I can be a very humble person. Kevin, can you teach me this? Can you do that? Let's learn, blah, blah, blah. I can be just very much like, I just want to learn, And then when it comes time, when the lights come on, and I'm doing the press conferences, and I'm, doing all the promotional materials, where I can take on the actor, the character of X, and I can act all this certain way that I know, or I'm pretty confident, will attract a lot of attention, right? People will hate me or love me. I'm polarizing, but people want to see me either win or get punched and knocked out. Whatever. But they're buying tickets to watch the event. I'm making money promoting the event. So there's an act that I can perform that can be beneficial financially. It could be mostly financially, right, or competitively, right? I'm talking trash to you, my opponent. Hopefully, I'm getting you really angry, and you're doing something dumb because you're so mad. Or maybe you're getting doubtful. You're getting, you really lack some self-confidence. And the more I talk to you, the less you're like or the more that you internalize that. Oh crap, like he's right. I do suck, and I am whatever. Like that happens, right? So especially when people like I always think of like Josie Aldo was a classic example. People were terrified of him, and rightfully so. They were terrified. Nobody would ever say anything to Josie Aldo. And then Conor McGregor just started jawing just relentlessly at him. It's like the this isn't a good analogy, but it's kind of like the big dog, and then there's a little dog. And the big dog's used to like everybody being afraid of it, and then the little dog's like, ah, and the big dog's like, what? It's like, or like a bear or something, like a little dog comes, or a cat comes screeching out, and then the big bear's like, ma, and it runs away. Because it's never been confronted like that before. I think there's almost that kind of mentality or reaction. So yeah, you can put on that show, whether you are actually arrogant or not. At least there's some benefit to you, and I'd say that's part of the gamesmanship and salesmanship. Of being a successful athlete.
So then why?
Especially in a sport like MMA.
So it's acceptable in the game of MMA.
Or fighting, any kind of boxing. You see this in sports all the time.
Is it just in sports, or is it like outside of sports too, where if being arrogant will get you?
I mean, you can take on. When you're negotiating a contract, when you are, any kind of interaction can be colored by that kind of gamesmanship.
Yeah. So why take life out of the equation? Like, why not include?
Well, it's the difference between like kind of personal relationships, and like a business negotiation or some sort of competitive thing.
What do you mean?
If we're all here, we're all just training, right? Like, I don't think of that as I don't think I personally need to be like what benefit do I get from like talking smack all the time? I'm not making more money out of it, and I'm just here to train. Like, what do I get out of it? I just get a lot of people to hate me, right? Because I talk a lot of shit.
Maybe.
Usually the person who talks a lot of shit gets rubbed out, right? Like they usually do. At some point they're gonna rub somebody the wrong way, and that person's gonna stand up and you're gonna jack them up. That's usually how it works.
Not in the business setting though.
Oh yeah, in the business setting too. Yeah, if you talk crazy shit and you don't deliver, you're gonna get booted out as soon as some people,
But if you deliver, it's fine.
Sometimes
Sometimes, yeah, if you do your job well and you make a lot of money for the company,
Yeah.
they're probably going to keep you around. And even if you're an arrogant, insufferable
Yeah.
prick, they're probably still going to keep you around unless you break the law. And even then, sometimes they still keep you around because they just like the money,
Yeah.
right? That's okay, whatever. Until whoever you're terrorizing, like you're sexually harassing your secretary, and then they
Yeah.
turn around and sue you, you know, or the cops come, you know, you're Harvey Weinstein and Bill Cosby or somebody.
Well, I could be that way with like my family, right? Like if I
You could be like an arrogant prick.
yeah, and like if,
No, then
as
your
long
family's
as
not gonna like
well, no, as long as I make enough money, like you know, my wife and kids aren't gonna leave me.
I mean, they might. I mean, it depends on how bad of a
well,
terrible prick you are.
if I make enough money, then probably not, right?
I mean, it depends on who you're with.
Depends.
Some people are not going to stand for that kind of crap. Other people don't care. In which just cases, like, they don't really care about you, they just care about the money you're making. If that's the life you want to live, that's probably why you're such an arrogant prick, because you can't even, you can't even, like, get the love of your own wife and children.
Yeah.
Probably explains that pretty well.
That's expensive.
I mean, so I guess I'm just, like, if there's some sort of, like, benefit, like, direct benefit,
Yeah.
as part of the game, it's acceptable almost. Trash talking on the basketball court or, promotion on an MMA, like a promo thing, okay, fine, whatever. Nobody, I don't blame anybody. If I see Conor McGregor or I see, who's the other guy that's like a Trumpkin, who likes to pretend like he loves Trump. He's like a MAGA guy.
Stone Cold Steve Austin.
No, not him.
No.
There's another Cody, was it Cody? I forget what his name is. He's some MMA guy.
Cody.
He was talking some crazy shit and then Usman killed him.
Who?
Usman, I don't forget his first name.
Killed him?
No, I didn't kill him, but he like beat him
Like in a ring?
in a fight.
Oh.
But I mean, it was good. I mean, like people watched it. I watched it. I was like, I want to see the guy get his face punched in.
Yeah.
They delivered.
Yeah.
But like Floyd Mayweather is like the master of this, of like being super arrogant and getting millions of dollars because people tune in to watch him get knocked out. He never does, right?
I remember when John Jones was humble.
Was he ever humble?
Yeah, like in the very beginning, like
Yeah.
he would say nice things and bow to people and stuff, and then
Yeah.
like the script flipped at some point. And
Well, but like he's a salesman, right? Like he's got to sell. Like people at some point in the fight game, people don't want to see like even GSP.
yeah.
Like he was always the Boy Scout. Always the Boy Scout.
I mean, this is what's rubbing me the wrong way because it seems like life is, at least from my perspective, is becoming more and more filled with like you're always selling yourself to other people to some degree, right?
Well,
like
that's
you're
your bit. I mean, if you're a professional athlete, you are literally
But
selling
like
your
even when
image.
you're just a regular person, you're like selling this image to yourself to other people. Maybe not like your closest friends and family, but when you go out, when I'm here, right? Like I act a different way than I do at home. It's like it's a
Probably good.
yeah, it's a good thing. Like it
When
should
you're out and about, you should probably be a little more civilized.
Yeah, and
Wear
like
some clothes and
I don't know.
take a shower. Be nice to people.
So yeah. I don't
Why
know.
does that rub you the wrong way? That you have to like be different. Of course, you have a different persona. You act differently in front of your mom than
Yeah.
you do your girlfriend, than you do your client, than you do your boss, than you do. I mean, like.
Well, it's yeah.
Then you do your cat.
Well, it's
you know?
like it feels like it's good to be humble in
Always good to be humble, Kevin.
it's
Always
good to
be
be
humble.
unless it makes you a lot of money. Typically, directly.
I think if it can help you get a competitive edge in something that is like good for your profession, then yeah, do it.
That's the idea. Like
Why not?
if you want to be a lawyer, right?
Yeah.
It's good to have that like.
You can be an arrogant person.
Or like
there are
if you're-
people. There's different lawyers for different people, right?
Yeah.
Like some people want to see they have an image of a lawyer as being like this, like pugnacious bulldog
Yeah.
who's like just totally combative and angry and almost violent.
Yeah.
And some people want that. They want the
Yeah, and
the
you
bulldog.
start adopting that persona.
Other
super
people, they
early.
don't want that at all.
Yeah.
And the bulldogs, yeah, they have their place, right? Like usually when I see that, I realize that person doesn't really have a good legal argument. They're going to make my life miserable by being that way.
Yeah.
It's you know what you're getting. And when I see somebody who I know is smart and they don't have to talk a lot of trash or act that way, then I get worried because I'm like, usually that person has a good legal argument.
Well,
But the law is different. The law is different.
I think arrogance is always trash talk and obvious statements of their own abilities. But
It only gets you so far. I don't think it's beneficial to act arrogantly when you're not making any money by doing it.
yeah.
You're not making any friends. It's always a question: are you making friends or are you making money? Or are
you making enemies? Right? So you can kind of guide yourself
Are those
in your
the reasons to
actions.
do things?
Huh?
Are those the reasons to do things? Making
I don't know, those are the big three, right? Like, or not do things,
Yeah. Doesn't make me any enemies.
right? I mean, so if you walk in and you start talking crazy trash and being arrogant about yourself, okay, are you an MMA fighter at an MMA promotion? Well then, you know, hey, they love you.
What if I'm just really funny?
Then be funny, I don't know.
Dang it. I should learn how to be funny.
Be nice to people. Be kind to yourself too, but be humble.
Don't always be humble.
Always be humble.
Be appropriately, moderately humble.
Yeah, all right. I'll go with that.